Hello and welcome back. So this is where we left off um in the previous video. So we've done the experience section, we've done the skills section, we've done the portfolio section. Looking at it, well, it's not responsive, but at least it's still at the mobile view, like at the middle, because we are looking at a mobile first approach, right? So we want it to be um good on a mobile first before we then consider all other screen sizes. Okay, so now I've gotten the hobbies section commented out because I don't want to type every single thing. Um, so just get rid of this, then okay, then get rid of this too. Okay, so now everything looks way big, right? The images are overflowing out. Okay, we'll fix that pretty soon. The images are way too big. Okay, so let's walk through what I just included. Um, okay, so now we have the hobbies section. Let me show you the reference. Okay, so now we have hobbies, right? So we have this image. Then when we over like it's lighter, then we over it becomes brighter. So this is just a little over effect, right? So there's nothing really much to do in this hobby section, so we're going to just quickly run through that quickly. So we have the section, right? So if you take notes, every single part of the portfolio is a section, right? So you should always use semantic HTML. Then notice every single thing is in the main, right? So in the main tag, which we did in the previous video, because there's no header here, so this portfolio site doesn't have a header, so there's no need to declare a header. Even this portfolio is not a header, it's a section, right? So I just wanted to be clear about that before moving on. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. Now we have the hobbies. Every section must have at least an h2 or h1 to h6 element, right? So we are following the rule. So when you over section, there's a modal that will pop up. You could read that to know more about the section tag. So it's a semantic HTML element. Now we have the H2 saying that okay, this section is for hobbies, right? So we have the hobbies grid, which I'm not going to talk, which I'm not going to use for this video or not. I might use it. Let's see. Then we have a div holding the content, which doesn't have a class name. I guess I didn't need a class name. So then we have the image, which is this big image right there. Then gaming, then the p tag, which is just a dummy text I didn't want to type. If you don't know how to do that, you just say love then 5. So it's the same thing. That's how I got this text here. Also, one quick note, you should always add an alt attribute to your images, right? To make them so that's when you're following the accessibility rules, right? So you have to make sure that anytime you include the image, right, so you have the alt property describing what that image is all about. So here I'm saying this image is for gaming, right? It's not that descriptive, I know, but at least you should just always put the alt attribute tag, alt attribute. It's not tag. Okay, so now we have another div also holding another image, right? Then basically the same thing here. So we have 3 div inside of the section, right? So from the reference, we have 3 images: gaming, listening to music, biking. So those are my hobbies. Well, not my hobbies. Those are what I picked for the portfolio. So now let's move on to our components, right? So the component is where I put all the components, right? So the hobbies is a component on its own, a section, right? So in my case, I've categorized the hobbies section as a component of its own. So right here, you say hobbies. Let me move up a little bit. Okay, hobbies. So now we know the hobbies section is also sharing the properties of the experience section and so on and so forth. And in the previous video, we created a mixin, so which is at include the card style, right? So at include this card style. Doing this, now we can see that we have this white-ish. We can't see it properly because of the image. The image is way too big. Don't worry, we'll be fixing that in a bit. So now I'm going to say and grid. So I want the direct div. So I'm saying the direct div, right? The div next to this. So when you VS Code does give you a preview of what you just wrote. So you can see elements class is equals to the hobbies grid. It even shows you what the class name is. So hobbies grid. Remember we used the ampersand, or VS Code does show you the actual class name, even though you use ampersand. So here it's saying the direct div in the below nexted in the hobbies grid. So now we want this to be, the margin top should be 1 rem. We just want some space, right? So this space here. So now let's fix the image. And so the ampersand, then the image, right? So in the HTML file, I gave the images. So we have hobbies image, right? So this is the parents using BEM, right? So this is the parents, then this is a child, it's an element. So this is the block, and this is an element of the block, right? So this is the block, the hobbies section block. So now we want the height to be 150 pixels. So now everything looks small. Now we want the width should be 100%, and layout bricks, right? Well, it looks stretched. Oh lord, I can't pronounce that word. Object fit should be cover. Remember I talked about this property in the previous video, right? So I'm saying object fit cover is saying take the default width, right, which is 100%, but then do not stretch the image, right? So make the image adapt to the width. So as I increase this, if you notice there's a slight increase in the image. I don't know if you noticed it, right? So the image also grows along the width of the container, right? The container is what is holding the image, which is the image itself. Okay, so now I hope if you don't understand this, maybe comment in the section below, then I would explain better. Then we want the border radius to be BR. Okay, should be border radius, right? So we've declared this variable up here in the base, I guess, right? Yeah, so we want it to be 10 pixels. Then also we want the opacity to be 0.85. Sorry, point. Oh lord. So we could actually leave it like this, right? So 0.85. So Sass does compile this to wait, where would it be? Down, yeah. Okay, I thought Sass was going to put 0, but it didn't. And Sass also does these great things, these features for you, or prefix rather. I think they're called prefix, right? So that it will be compatible on older browsers. So before making this tutorial, I turned on the auto prefix for Sass, which was turned off before. Now let's look at our CSS file. So Sass created this map file. Honestly, I don't know what this file is for, right? So you could delete it, but I guess it's mapping all your styles, right? So you can see the sources are from the style file, then the base, then the component. But please don't mess with this file, right? It's I should have deleted it. But remember, when you get the Sass extension, whenever you do this, it's going to whenever you compile your Sass, whenever you watch your Sass file, it's going to generate the CSS file and the map file. And I showed you in the settings in for Sass settings in the previous video how I made the path, right? How I made the path to auto generate in the CSS file. If you haven't watched the previous video, please do watch that before this video in order for you to follow along properly. So now moving on, let's get rid of this. Okay, so now in the component, so now we want whenever we over the image, right? So we want the opacity to be 1, which is the default. Oh yeah, it's changed now to 0. Nice. So 1 is the default, right? So whenever we over the image, we want the opacity back to 1. And that's it. So now moving on, now we're done with the hobby section. That's all. It's pretty short, right? So now moving on, we have to uncomment this. So I'm going to get rid of this, then get rid of this, and open this up. Voila! Now this is going to be a lot, right? So we have the another section. So I call this the project section, then the project header, then the project. So now this is the block, right? So even though the block elements, right, the block elements I've decided is not above all this, I can still access these classes. I'll show you how, right? So this is the block, then this is a block element, then this is a block element, then this is another block element. So remember I said I prefer naming things like the block underscore underscore content, then the block underscore underscore content underscore tags, right? Some people might just name it like this, so the project tag, which is still okay, right? But to keep things organized in my way, I decided to name it like this. So I know that, okay, this is the content, then these tags belong to the content. I hope that is clear enough. Okay, so now let's go through everything we have here. So now we have the section saying this is the project section, right? Then we have the header. Let's go to the reference so I can point things out, right? So the section is like what is containing all other divs and sections. So now the first div is saying the project header, which is this display here. Then we have another section within this section, which is the project section. So now this section has an image, which is empty. We're going to be adding the image through CSS, right? Through the background image property. Then the project content, right? So now we have the tags, which are these tags we can see here. Then an H2 saying this is a portfolio. So this is my portfolio. We can go to the demo. Then voila, this is my portfolio, right? My portfolio looks terrible now that I look at it again. It needs a completely remake. What do you think? You can leave a comment in the section below telling me what you think about my original portfolio. I'll be remaking this year. Hopefully. Okay, so now let's go back. So now we have some dummy text, right? I didn't know what to write. So now we have series of links, right? We're just two links. Then we have the first link, which has a class of primary button. I didn't use BEM method of writing for this. I just named it PRY, then BTN. So which is saying primary button, then this is my secondary button. Then this is where it's going to link to. This is also where it's going to link to. And the class name for this is project underscore underscore content underscore underscore links. Or if you would like to name it like this, it's totally fine, right? So just for me to keep things organized, to know that this links belongs to the project content. That's why I decided to name things like this. Okay, so moving on, we have a section, basically the same thing. All that is changing is going to be the image and the H2 elements, so the content in the H2 and then the links. It's basically the same thing repeated 3 times. So I didn't want to type this out because I'm basically repeating the same thing. So now let's move on to Sass, right? So now we have the project, right? I'm going to target the project first, the project selector, because if you notice, every single one of them has projects. Even this has projects section, right? So we have project first. From this, we're going to target this, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to say and include the card style, right? So I want them to have the card style. Now as you can see, the card style has been applied already. So this is why you need to get live server, which auto reloads anytime you make changes to your file. So now I want the image, the background, the background image. You have all those dot slash images, then image 1. This image. So I know some people might be confused about dots. I know the image isn't showing. We'll fix that right now. Well, okay, let's fix that first, right? Okay, so now we want the width to be 100%, then the height. So the reason why the image wasn't showing was because there was no width, there was no height, just a blank div. So now there's a height. Now the image shows repeated 3 times. Okay, so now we want the background should be background color. We want the variable text, and there's nothing like that. Nice. I'm going to comment this out. Then we want the border radius to be the B radius, which is also border radius. Then the background size should be cover. Notice background has a short form for all of this, but I decided to like split it out. Then the background position should be at the center. So what background size is saying like cover the whole, like the width, cover the width. So we have contain. We also have contain, right? So if you notice, the image is repeating itself, right? So we'll fix that. Let me fix that first. Um, Background repeats, no repeats. Now we can't see anything. So let me give you this a border just for demonstrating my points. Solid black. Okay, so now we have a border. Now we can see whenever we say the background size should be contained. Let me uncomment this, the background position. Okay, so the background position also matters. Let me reduce this, the width of this. Okay, so the background position matters. That is if you want the image to be centered in the container. I keep using the word container, right? I meant like this div, right? So this div that has the project image, right? So this is the div where we want the image to lie, right? Where there's nothing here. So the text showed here, but like we want the image to be in this div, right? So that is what I'm referring to as the container. So now when we use position center, by default, the position of the image will always be at the left. Now we say position center, the background position rather, center. So we want the image to be at the center of the entire div, which is the project image, right? So when we use contain, right? So contain is saying, hey, this image remain at your appropriate ratio, right? Don't fill up the whole div, which is this width. But whenever you want the image to fill up the whole the whole div, you use cover. By using cover, you're saying, hey, image, fill up the width, right? Cover up the 100% width, even though your white proportion isn't up to a 100%, right? So as I increase, the image also tries to grow, right? So that's because of the background size cover. So there are a lot of properties VS Code can show you. So we have auto, then we have contain, then we have cover. I'm going to be using cover. Then this is going to be center. I can get rid of the border now. I don't really need that. So I get rid of that. And also we want the box shadow. Box shadow inset. So don't worry, I'll be explaining what inset is if this is the first time you're actually seeing that. So RGB A, then yep, I think this should be 144. Yes. So now inset is saying apply the box shadow inside. If I should increase this to 10 or 20, 50. Let me get rid of this inset. Wow, it doesn't show. Wait, let me get rid of the image. Then increase this. Okay, yes. Okay, now it shows. So now inset is saying apply the shadow within whatever it is in, right? So within the project image, right? If I take this out, the shadow is going to be outside of the block, right? So of the project image, right? So inset is saying apply the shadow inside of it. So I'm going to go a few steps back. But the image the shadow doesn't show, right? So it's a subtle shadow. It doesn't show at all. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this out because it makes no difference. I think the image is overlapping the shadow. I don't know why I applied this property in the first place, but at least I've explained what the inset value does. Okay, so now we want the opacity of the image to be 0.9. Remember, 1 is the default opacity, so now it looks washed away. Then once transition, so we're identifying that this transition applies on the opacity property, right? So we're giving it a duration of 200 millisecond and a timing function is in. So now this should be an ampersand. So whenever this element is overed, we want the opacity to be 1. So whenever we over the image, we want the opacity to be 1. Okay, so now all of this, we can create a mixin for this. All right, so I'm going to cut this and right here, I'm going to say at mixing, then it's going to be an image. Then I'm going to paste it here, save. Then I'm going to say at include. So whenever you want to use a mixing, you have to say at include, then img. Then you terminate it, right? At include ing, and the image still applied everywhere. So like using the mixing makes this part free, right? So there's not so much properties added here because we've broken down the mixing into parts, right? So instead of all these properties added here, making the components look cumbersome or much, right? We can just break things apart. So that's one of the powers of using Sass. So now we want to target each of the images, right? So we could say and, right? So we're saying the project, then the int of type, right? So int of type. So we want the first one. Then we want and also, sorry, the ampersand, then the image, then the background image should be // images, then my portfolio.png. Does it work? Yes, it works. Okay, so now what I'm saying here, I'm saying the end of child is saying the first project, right? Pick the first project, then the project image, then apply this background image to it, which is the first one. So int of type is saying the first one. So if I should change this to 2, it will be the second project. Then guess what? If I change to 3, it will be the third one. So you should know about this kind of properties, right? So we have, sorry, is a field element, right? Which is the int of type. There are multiple other type of field elements. You should search on that. Or let's search here. Field elements. So Oh, no, it's a featured class, right? So I get this also confused. So it's a featured class, not a featured element, right? So featured classes use a single column after the selector, right? So there are lots. So we have active, checked, disabled, and end of type. There are lots, right? So you can go through all of these to know about them. We have int child, we have not. This is new. Focus over. So these are featured classes, right? So if it was something like this, I think we've used the featured elements here before. Um, yeah. So the after and the before, all these are. So this is a featured element. Moving on, right? I'm just going to duplicate this 3 times or 2 times rather. Also, why am I using this dot? Right? I didn't explain that. So dot. So the first dot means the current directory. The second dot means, hey, go one step upward. So like now I'm saying from my Sass folder, right? Assuming it was a single dot, I'm saying this image folder should be in the Sass folder. But since the image folder isn't in the Sass folder, I'm saying leave the Sass folder, right? So let's shrink this back. So I'm saying leave this folder, then go look for the image folder, then find the image, right? So the first dot identifies the current directory where you're accessing the image, right? The second dot is saying leave this directory, right? Leave this Sass directory. Rather, it's going to be leave the CSS directory. Remember that your browser does not understand Sass. So make sure whatever the way you access your image is friendly for the CSS. What I mean is that for instance, if your CSS folder isn't here, like the Sass folder is, let's say this your style sheet was here, there could have been a problem or not. No. But you should be mindful of the structure of your files, right? That's all I'm saying. So if the structure is wrong, your image reference is going to be wrong. So I have this extension called AutoPath, right? AutoPath. Yeah, sorry, Path Intelligence. Intelligence, right? You should get this extension so it helps you complete, right? So it like remember when I included dot then slash, then it showed me all of this. So dot slash. So at the first dot slash, so you see from the first dot it's going to show me everything that is in my current directory. So let's go through it again. So we have the base, then we have the style, which is true. We have the base, then we have the style. So this is the component file. So it didn't bother showing that, but instead it showed the base file, then the styles file. So when you include another dot, now it leaves this directory, moves one step up further. Right now it shows you that hey, you have a CSS file, you have an image file, then you have the index file, then you have the Sass folder which you just left. So there's no point going back there, right? Then we have the style sheet, right? This style sheet which we don't need, but it's still here. Then now we want to go to the images folder. So that's basically what that extension is for. So if you feel you need it, you should get it. So now moving on, we want this image to be Eddie, right? Then the third one should be checkout. Oh yeah, we want this to be 2, then this should be 3. So now everything should work perfectly fine. So each individual having 3 different images, right? So I could come to my base, then take away this image, including this. We don't need the box shadow, even the background color, we don't need that. So, well, we do need the background color, right? So if the image wasn't showing, we want something to be displayed there. For some reason, text variable has not been declared. Okay, so my text variable should be so this is the color that I want all my text should take, right? So it's going to be 828282, which is the same thing as my heading 2. So heading 2 should be 33333. Okay, now that is better. And what else? Nothing else. So now we're adding on the image. So now I can uncomment this out. So if the image doesn't show for some reason, right, we want the background to display this color. So now you can see it's coming together, right? Moving on, now we want to target the content, right? So the project content, which are all of this here. So the first thing is the tag. So now I'm saying the project content tags rather. So now we want the margin, the top and bottom should be 5 rem. There should be a full stop, a period sign. Then left and right should be 0. So I'm saying top and bottom 0.5 rem, then left and right 0. Now the H2 selector, the font width should be 500. Then the margin bottom should be 0.5 rem. That makes it look much more better. Then we want the links. So remember I named it the project content links. Then here we're in the project content, then now links. Okay, so we want display flex, right? Then the margin top should be 1 rem. So we want some gap here. So this gap here, margin top should be 1 rem. Then the links A plus A. So this is an adjacent selector. So I'm saying the margin left should be 5 pixels. So I will make sure these links look better very soon. So remember about the adjacent selector, I'm saying the first A, then the second A. So this margin left is actually applied only to this the second A element, right? So it's only applied to the code anchor tag. So saying A is actually an anchor tag, right? Instead of saying A element, it's an anchor tag or a link. It's a link, but it's called an anchor tag, right? So now let's add some styles to our base styles, right? Things that we want to be reusable. So now let's use the extend property, which I haven't showed you yet. So we want the button, then we want the padding to be 0.5 rem, then 1.5 rem. So I'm saying the top and bottom should be 0.5 rem, 1.5 rem. So this is much like also as the function of like a button, sorry, of a mixing, right? So this is the way for us to share properties also in Sass. So in my blog, I wrote about it. It's here. So in table of contents, 6, right? So we have extend and in or inheritance, right? So it's where you use the percentage key, right? Use the percentage symbol, then the extend property name, right? This is just when you don't want to keep repeating things, right? You just want them to be at a go. Probably you don't want to use the mixing. You don't want to use a mixing. You want to use the extend. So this would be an extension of all the buttons I'm going to have. So let's just type in the properties and you see how it will turn out. So the border, we want no border with borders. Then the border radius, right? So the border radius should be the B radius plus 10 pixels. Notice we could do this with Sass pretty easily, right? Instead of putting a cowl or calculate, right? So instead of adding this method, we don't need that in Sass. Right now, it's not displaying anything in because we've not extended it to a class yet. So now we're not going to see it, but I'm going to show you later on. So this is going to result to 20. So I think the border radius is set to 10. Yeah, 10 pixels. So basically we're saying 10 pixels plus 10 pixels. So the text decoration is going to be none. Also the transition should be transform. So I'm saying the transition should only be applied to the transform property, right? So the duration is 200 milliseconds, then is in. So now whenever this property, right? So whenever this extended property is going to be applied to an element, we want it at its over state, right? So we want the transform to scale 0.95. So the scale property, one, it is default, right? So one is the default, but we want it to scale 0.95. So we want it to shrink a little bit, just like this button. So when we over it, it shrinks. Then also we want the box shadow. The box shadow should be 0.04 pixels, then 2 pixels. I'm going to explain, don't worry. RGBA. You don't want this. RGBA 128, 128, 128, 0.3363. So now the first value here is the x-axis, and this is the axis, then this is the spread, right? So how should the box shadow spread? So now let's move back to what we're currently working on. So now remember I named those buttons primary BTN. Now we're going to extend the the BTN. Now there's no color. So the color is going to be, the background color should be at BTN blue. So now we have this nice transition here. Then we want the color to be white. Doesn't it look better? And now we can actually click on it, but I don't click on it because it will link me somewhere else. So now let's fix the secondary button. So I'm basically going to copy all of this. Yeah. Then all I'm going to change is the color, which is going to be yeah, the color is going to be BTN blue. Then this should be white. Then I'm also going to add a box shadow so that we can see it. Then box shadow is going to be 1 pixel solid gray. It's not showing gray. Is that how it is in the reference? No. Yeah, I said box shadow. Rather, it should be the border. Right, so I want the border to be 1 pixel solid gray, not box shadow, so that we can actually see it. Then when we over it, the these properties apply. So now let's go to our CSS file. Then it should be way up. So now we can see the primary button and the secondary button, they both share all of this because we use the extended property, which is this, which is a feature only available to Sass, or both Sass and right, I mean SCSS and then SASS, which is Sass. But remember that we're using SCSS, which is still pronounced Sass, or you could call it SCSS, but the short name is still Sass. Right, so both properties are sharing all of this. Remember, this WebKit transition is just for this property to be compatible on older browsers. So if you don't want this, you can turn it off in the settings, which I'll probably show you guys later. Then all these are shared. Then we have this. So now, if you notice, these properties are now above everything else, and that is not ideal, right? So they're above this and this. So the reason is because of the this symbol, right? So whenever you're using the extend, it's going to apply all of this above the properties. We don't want that. So I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to add them here. It's still above, right? Great. Okay, so the solution is to completely get rid of this. So completely get rid of that. Then in here, we're going to add them here. So it's going to be Yeah, but this is way too nested for me. So we have the project content, links, then the format button, then this, then this. This looks too long. But anyway, this is what we've got, right? So remember, whenever you're using the extend property, if you should include this above, right? Like we did here, we included it here. So it will be above any other property, including all of the properties that were above here, the components, because in the style file, so we have the base is going to come first before the component. So now let's fix this project section. Right, so I'm going to fix it in the base file, or the base partial file. So we're going to say project, um the project header, comma the blog header. So we've not done the blog header yet, but don't worry, they both share the same styles, right? So I'm going to say card style. Then I want the font width should be bold. Then letter spacing 1.5 pixels. Then finally the margin bottom should be 1 rem. So the card style, which we know, I'm saying apply all these properties. Then the font weight should be bold. Then the letter spacing, like each word, right? If I should uncomment this, then you see it's like clustered to each other, but with letter spacing, it's spreads out. Then the margin bottom, so this little gap here is what this margin bottom is applying.